Hi, this is Doc with Doc and Lefty. We're here every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. Lefty has not shown up. I'm opening the show. And you know what? We don't need Lefty. He can go to whatever liberal love fest he's at and stay there. We have extra special guest Larry Saylor. Now, Larry says that he's just a farmer. Now, to you city folk, you might say, yeah, he's just a farmer. The people that have grown up out in the country worked on a farm, and that would actually be Lefty and I both. We understand that's a lot of hard work, and people don't eat without farmers. Larry, how you doing today?
Doing good. Do have to correct you. My last name is pronounced Saylor.
Saylor? Oh,
German.
I'm terribly sorry. See,
Yep.
if it was SEI, I would have got that.
Yep. They just never changed it when they came over, so everybody gets it wrong. It's not a problem.
Well, that's all right. Well, it's Larry Saylor then. Boy, am I embarrassed. So, time for a commercial break if the doc's embarrassed. Anyway, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us where you grew up and what brought you into farming.
I grew up by the big town of Geneva, Iowa. It's up in north central Iowa. It's a big burb. There's probably 100 people living there now.
Man, that has it experienced a lot of population growth in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s?
I would say it hasn't seen any population growth since I grew up.
Since you grew up?
It's always been getting smaller.
So it's just been getting smaller. So it's reverse population growth.
Right, pretty much.
Now, I will tell you, we've had a 33% population growth just in the last 5 seconds. Lefty has shown up.
Hi.
And there he is.
Welcome, Des Moines, to the Doc and Lefty program.
In the lovely studios downtown.
Every webcast1live.com. Tuesday, 6 to 7. Okay, go ahead.
Well, see, and that's why he opens, because I'm not going to. This is Larry Saylor. This is the Lefty. He was just telling us he was growing up in Geneva, Iowa.
Yep.
Up almost in your neck of the woods.
Almost.
So
not quite as northwest as Lamar's.
No, that's quite a bit further west.
Yeah. So
I'm a little more east, north central, but on the east side of the interstate.
So
yep.
So what love fest were you at that made you late today? Because that's what I told the listeners.
A love fest. No, it was a lot more boring and a lot less lovey-dovey than that.
Oh, so you're at like an Obama rally?
No, I was just at the office. I got tied up.
Oh, you got tied up?
Yep.
Your girlfriend didn't come by again, did she?
She did not.
Good,
No.
good.
Pretty boring.
Yeah, that's pretty boring. No. Blake works really hard for a lefty. Oh, my goodness. So we're talking to Larry Saylor. And so you grew up in Geneva. And did you go to college?
I actually went to Ellsworth College in Iowa Falls.
Oh, yeah.
Back at that time in the early 70s, there wasn't much there to really study for farming. There was other colleges probably would have been better, but just to fill in my time, that's where I went. Plus, they started a wrestling program to start the year I started there. So
all right.
I got to wrestle in college, so I can say that.
Good deal.
From there, in the early 70s, I actually moved away from Geneva. I moved to the big town of Bradford. 4 miles away I moved. And
my goodness.
Started farming at that time. So in the early 70s are pretty good farming. It was kind of a boom cycle like we've had probably the last 5 to 10 years here now. And then, of course, we hit the 1980s and everything fell apart.
All right. So did you survive that pretty all right? Intact anyway?
It pretty well ruined my whole operation. I actually started a construction company, I built some of these hog buildings that are out in the country. I had crews, and I think we worked in about 10 different states, went around the country and did construction. Clawed my way back in, and I'm farming now again, but I'm a pretty small farmer. Back at that time, I was considered a large farmer. I had almost 1,000 acres, and now I've got 400. So I'm not near as big, but I do have quite a few hogs.
Well, good deal.
So
good.
Back into it.
All right. And now, when you were wrestling in college, you ever wrestle against Jim Gibbons?
No, he's quite a bit younger than I am, so I never had to do that.
All right. Well, good. Because apparently he's some kind of monster out there on the mats.
He was pretty good. He was tough. Yep.
So tell me about your trip to Ukraine to study their farming methods.
Well, we went over to Ukraine. There's about 20 of us Iowa farmers went over there. It was kind of sponsored by the Farm Bureau. And it's a coming country as far as their ag industry. It's when it broke up from the Soviet Union, it was kind of just scattered operations. It wasn't very organized. A lot of the ground sat empty, wasn't farmed. But just in the last 10 to 15 years, it started to get more organized. There's agri-businesses there now that have put together some of these big farms pretty similar to what it was under the Soviet Union. Some of them, we were on one farm, I think it was close to 1 million acres. Of course, when we went over there, everything we had to convert. There was hectares is how they measured the ground, and everything's in liters. And we had quite a few guys that had iPads, and they were always on them converting. But it's made big gains. They're building a lot of infrastructure. They need to build roads. The roads are terrible. But on the Gulf of the Black Sea, there's a lot of big exporting companies are building like crazy, and they're trying to get the grain that's being grown now out of the country. So they are becoming a competitor.
Yeah, that's one of the things. The very first time I flew into Ukraine, I kept looking down and thinking, what is that yellow stuff down there? If it wasn't, instead of being green like corn and in rows, it was still in rows, but it was all yellow. When it landed, it was sunflower seeds. Yep. So the other day, I'm driving out to Gillette, Wyoming, and all along the way, I must have saw 4 different sunflower seed operations. Yep. Now, did you bring that information home to your farming friends and say, hey, listen, instead of corn, we need to go with sunflower seeds?
It's probably a good idea to be a little more diversified than we are now. When I was growing up, we had a little bit of everything. You had pasture, you had cows, you had hogs, you had the whole works. But it's kind of like what stores in town have done. Walmarts. They were more efficient. So that's kind of what ag has done here in Iowa. We've gotten more efficient, more specialized. Sunflowers are not really a crop that we need to grow in Iowa. They're grown where it's a little bit drier. It's more arid. The new genetics that we have in our corn now are using less water to grow. So the corn acres actually are spreading out into some of that area. But you have to have the ability to adjust to whatever the market demands. You have to grow the crop where you can make the most money.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just happen to know that Ukraine is responsible for 90% of our sunflower stuff.
Really?
Yeah, they produce 90% of the world's sunflowers. And what's the big sunflower seed company the baseball players all use? You know, Blake?
I don't know.
Well, anyway, my son chews them all the time. So whatever they are, they're sitting at home. And they have a giant factory over there that they just produce. It's right in between between Kiev and a little town called Bilasurkva. Okay. So, and I'm sure you stomped through that territory up in there.
We started out in Kiev. That's where we flew into.
Yeah.
And then we kind of branched around. We drove all around Ukraine, I think, for about 9 days. But that was about 15 miles an hour because the ruts in the roads are terrible.
Terrible, yeah.
And that's one of the drawbacks holding back agriculture over there, is just infrastructure, trying to get it up to speed, being able to get the grain out of the country. I would say it looked to me like probably most of it over there was exported. Huge export companies.
Well, yeah, they export a lot of stuff. We're going to be back right after the break. Listen to Doc and Lefty on webcast1live.com. We have our special guest, Larry Seiler, today. And we're talking a little bit about foreign farming techniques. When we get back, we'll talk a little bit about politics. Stay tuned. We'll be back right after the break.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's good to be back in the leadoff position once again. Whenever you kind of get off on the wrong foot, it takes you a full segment to get caught back up. I don't think that Doc has ever had that problem, but sometimes the young pup just needs a little bit of a kick in the pants to get revved up and going. We got our special guest, Larry Seiler, here for the entire hour. And from what I've heard, Mr. Seiler, is that you are not only a sort of an agricultural extraordinaire with respect to just the actual technique of farming, but you also know a lot about the economics of it. And what would you tell a young guy or gal coming out at about 25 years old, says, you know what, I want farming to be my career after college, but I didn't grow up on the family farm, so I'm not going to inherit any land. How would they go about doing it?
I think you can do it the same way that it's always been done. You might not be able to jump right into farming and be a full-fledged farmer, and of course, unless your family was behind you, which a lot of, I think 98% of the farms in Iowa are still family farms. So there's a lot of the next generation comes right up through the farm. There's a lot of expansion on farms as far as there's opportunities in livestock. There's opportunities in specialty crops. Different things are coming on pretty strong now. Organic is a big market. We have farmers markets.
Mm-hmm.
You could start out on 5 acres and just work your way in, selling stuff at a farmers market.
It's interesting you bring up farmers markets because they have taken off in the last 10 years in Iowa.
Yes,
They're just ridiculous. And I've been down to the one just down here, really right outside the door, down a couple of blocks.
Absolutely.
Downtown.
That's a great one.
It's fantastic. It's the biggest one in Iowa, and the Des Moines Farmers Market's a lot of fun. But I did notice a couple of things. First of all, the meat that you get at the farmers market is the best meat you can buy, in my opinion. And this is talking to a guy whose first job was at Fairway. And remember, the story about Fairway is they had their own stockyards and they butchered their own animals and shipped it around the state and kept it really, really close to the vest. I always thought those were the best. No, the local farmers around central Iowa producing cattle and hogs is fantastic. But I noticed that there's a lot of resale for non-seasonable vegetables that have taken up these long, long benches at the farmer's market. I mean, you go in and you're expecting local produce and you're picking up green peppers from Mexico. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with green peppers in that may be slightly out of season. But Larry, do you kind of feel like, does that violate the spirit of the farmer's market at all? Or I was surprised. I don't know how I feel about it, I guess, from a business or from an ethical standpoint, but what are your thoughts on that?
The way the farmers markets are pretty well marketed is it's grown local. It's
exactly.
Local,
right?
You know your farmer. That's just kind of the way it's marketed. From being over in Ukraine, they had a real similar type of deal over there, only basically all of your food is sold in a farmer's market. They could just call them markets over there. And we stopped into one that was supposed to be the biggest market in the country, and it ran 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Oh, yeah, just off of Crashatic Street down there.
Sounds a lot like Hy-Vee, doesn't it?
Well, it was bigger than that. But the day we were there, it was 100 degrees. But they sell wholesale in that market. It's just not retail. There was restaurants would come in there, grocery stores, other markets would come in there and buy stuff. So what you buy at a farmer's market might not necessarily be grown locally, which doesn't make it bad. Even if it's grown right outside of town, if you don't know that farmer, you don't know the history of that crop, you don't know if there was a flock of geese flew over and contaminated the fruit, you really don't know.
Sure. And I don't want to impugn any of the folks that have stalls at the farmer's market at all, but maybe I was just under a misapprehension of the kinds of things. Like I wouldn't, you expect to get great tomatoes in Iowa at about mid-July to mid, like around this time is when they really start to be good. Maybe a little bit earlier in July, now that I think about it, when it's really nice and hot. Yep. And so you wouldn't expect maybe to get a good tomato at the end of May when the farmers market starts to open, and yet you see routinely these ripe red tomatoes that probably were shipped from Florida or California. And while I'm not saying that doing that is a bad thing at all, I would never say something like that. I did find it interesting that the main selling point of the farmers market is that, hey, this was maybe grown just outside. And what does that do to the folks that maybe, from St. Charles or from Creston or from around here that have a smaller operation and are growing things in season?
There actually has been quite a change in the farmers markets just in the recent years. They've got what they call high tunnels now,
Okay.
where you can actually go in there and you can start your crops a lot earlier and you can raise crops later. The environment is totally controlled. It's just like a desert.
Sure.
Actually inside these high tunnels, and you have to irrigate everything, but you can control the environment. It's basically the same thing that I do with my livestock.
Mm-hmm.
I try to control the environment so it's ideal for the livestock. At farmers markets, you can spread out your season by using these high tunnels. So just because you've got that really good tomato early in the season doesn't mean it was imported. It could have easily been grown in one of these high tunnels. And there's another opportunity right there for a young person to get started, or a guy to do it as a part-time job, whatever. If you build a high tunnel, you can spread out your season and make more money at the farmers markets.
Now that is fascinating. That's not something I've ever heard of before. But you're talking about livestock. I would imagine that last year was pretty tough for you, keeping those livestock watered and fed.
It was really, really hot and dry.
Yeah.
And that, if you want to talk about animal welfare, if you had those animals outside in that type of weather or in the winter, to me, that's just about cruelty to animals. Mm-hmm. We have the technology nowadays and the know-how to make a better environment for animals, and that's what we've done.
And are you primarily hogs, or do you do a lot of cattle too?
I just do hogs.
You just do hogs, okay.
Got one horse, bunch of cats.
So what do you think? What do you think about the butter cow incident?
It was really nasty, but it's kind of what we expect.
Yeah.
You've got those people out there trying to get publicity. They're really not making a very good point.
Nope.
I think it's bad publicity that they received, but you also have to remember that a lot of those groups aren't out there actually to improve the life of animals. They need controversy. HSUS is pretty much an organization that just wants to draw in money. They draw in funds so that they can do politics.
Yeah.
They lobby. They're not 0.5% of their funds go to actual animals. So you have to keep that in mind when you see something like the butter cow incident. They want publicity. They want controversy.
Well, one of the things I found interesting is back in the day, we would castrate, sheep in a certain manner, which I'm not going to describe. And now
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So now you have to band them. You have to band them up. And I can tell you, back in the old days, that sheep, that ram would be up running around, 2 minutes later maybe, and doing fine, no overt signs of distress, and you put a band on them, 4 days. They suffer with that. 4 days. And that just proves to me the ridiculousness and the lunacy of some of these groups out there that claim to be, animal welfare rights. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to denigrate people that go out there and advocate for animals, because I'm a giant animal advocate too. I don't even think you should declaw your cat. Of course, I don't think you ought to own cats, but that's just me.
Don't own mine; they're farm cats.
Yeah, you got the best kind of cat. The cat you just throw outside and say good luck to you. Anyway,
I was just going to chime in and say that I think that, in fairness I feel like the folks that would advocate for banding, I know what you're talking about. I know about the old way too. I'm not a farm kid, but my dad was, my grandpa was. So I've been around that kind of stuff, and I understand the difference. And I gotta say, I in fairness to the folks that advocated for one type or another, the folks I don't think that it is right to suggest that they were trying to do something wrong. I think their heart was in the right place, and maybe best practices would be a better argument to make than saying they're crazy or lunatics.
You get back to my basic argument against a lot of these groups, and that is a bunch of city folk rolling into the country, really not understanding farming, and then trying to make up these rules as we go. Because if you grew up on a farm, you would never think in a million years. I mean, don't get me wrong, you castrate anything, I think that's wrong, right? But there's a reason to do it. There's a reason to do it. Anyway, we're gonna actually, we're going to segue right into Polk County GOP.
Oh, what do they got going?
Well, they got that picnic. You going to the picnic here September 7th, Larry?
I haven't been to one.
Well, you ought to go. It's really all the senatorial candidates on the Republican side are going to be there. The governor's going to be there. Yep. Brad Zahn and I think Tom Shaw is going to be there as well. Both friends of the show. Mm-hmm. And several other luminaries from the Republican Party going to be there on September 7th. There's the Polk County website along with their phone number. You can get a hold of Daryl Carney or Ryan Keller, and they'd be glad to get tickets for you. Now we're going to come right back in with another segue. You read the paper today, Larry? Larry Lefty,
over
one of
here.
you.
I'm left-handed. You can call me Lefty too.
I did not.
Did you read it today, Larry?
No, I haven't had a chance to read the paper yet.
Well, apparently the co-chair of the Polk County GOP has quit. Said that the Polk County GOP, the state GOP, and the national GOP are too radical now. And so,
okay,
yeah, so he's quit. So what's your take on this big split in the Republican Party between essentially the libertarians, the Christian conservatives or neocons, if you want to go that far, and the old guard?
Well, the whole thing with politics is you have to come to an agreement at the end of the day. And, it's tough enough when we're doing it with the right and the left, just normal discussion between them. But then when you get some that are a little bit further out that completely stick to their guns, they have an idea that they don't want to change at all. Second Amendment, for instance, they don't want to give it all. And I can see that because it's in the Constitution. It should be a right. We shouldn't give on that. But I would go back, in the occupation I'm in, I would go back to the Farm Bill, which isn't even called the Farm Bill. It's called something about food security. I think I can't even remember what the name is anymore. It's got such a nickname. But you have to be able to come to an agreement to get any laws and bills passed. Mm-hmm. And that's what's been one of our biggest problems lately. You have to come to some type of an agreement. So when you have that much division just in one party, it makes it even that much tougher. But you need discussion. It's always good to listen. It's always good to talk. It's what you two guys do right here. That brings out ideas. It moves things along. Yeah. You have to talk.
Yeah. So what do you think about the food stamps and other food aid programs being lumped in with the farmers' bills?
Well, food is grown by farmers. I think it's a fantastic fit. The problem in the House was that the biggest drawback of getting the bill passed was food stamps. They wanted to cut the program more than what could get passed. So when they separated it out, then the farming part of the bill actually passed, and now it can be discussed between the House and the Senate. So it actually did move the bill along. Whether or not it's going to get done yet, I don't know.
Well, what do you think about having the food stamps provision, the welfare aspect of it, if you will, tied in with farmers' subsidies and farmers' programming?
I think it's been run pretty well by the USDA. We deal with food all the time, so it fits right in. I think it's a good match. I really do. And I think we should keep them together when this is all said and done. The welfare program is the part of the farm program that is just expanded like crazy. It's grown so much just in the last 4 years. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's at least doubled. So there's got to be some way to rein some of these welfare programs back in so that there's not so many people living on them, and the people that actually do have the jobs are getting taxed to death, and it's hurting the growth of the economy.
All right.
Well, I don't think that anything you said there was necessarily wrong, but I can tell you that a lot of the folks that get sort of food assistance are working. A lot of them are. A lot of them are the frustrating thing about the far you had, at least from we're talking about the split in the Republicans, because Democrats would give money to everybody, whatever. But when the Republican resistance to the Farm Bill,
I'm glad you said that.
I'm allowed. It's like making Norwegian jokes because I'm Norwegian. But the issue with the don't you ever make a Norwegian joke around me though. I'm really sensitive about it.
So that's kind of like saying Frank can make Mexican jokes because he's Mexican.
Wow.
I'm just saying.
Why'd you have to go there, man?
Yeah, you know it.
Yeah,
I can't leave it alone.
Well, there's a split in the Republican Party where you had some of the I hate using these buzzwords like establishment because this after a while it didn't mean anything anymore. But you had some folks in the House saying, we've got to get this farm bill taken care of, or else we're going to have milk prices skyrocket, and it's going to go back to like pre-depression levels, and we won't have any control over anything. These folks who aren't necessarily managed economy Republicans, but they are, they know what makes fiscal sense and what doesn't. And also how to do right by their constituents. And then other folks in the Republican Party say, well, no welfare for anybody. And like you said, what they did, rather than actually sit down and come to some sort of agreement, they just they blew the whole thing up. I guess I'm fascinated to hear someone with conservative credentials like yours talk about how food assistance in the Farm Bill is a good fit. And I think maybe a larger policy argument for the inclusion of the two. What's to say that it doesn't, in some capacity, help connect the rural to urban life because the folks that use food assistance are more urban folks.
Well,
and
that's true.
The people that produce the food are the rural folks. And so you have that rural state to urban state connection. And I'm just kind of coming up with that, but it sounds nice, right?
Well, yeah. But the problem I see with a lot of farm subsidies, I believe, we get back to picking winners and losers. And I am one of those people that say the less help people get, the more innovative they can become. And the problem that I see with farm subsidies is it creates an artificial market for land prices. Larry was talking about, somebody can go out, get 5 acres, start there and work your way up. Well, for crying out loud, at $12,000 an acre, that's $60,000 to come up with. And 5 acres is not going to be able to produce enough to make the payment on that. And that's part of the problem I see with this. And this is why the corporations are coming in, not only because they see a new market, which they do in ethanol or emerging world markets, but also they get all these subsidies back. I'll never forget Dan Rather gets and then this is back in the mid 90s. He got $6 million a year in farm subsidies for a farm he's never visited in North Dakota. And the abuses like this that make it difficult. Plus, it's guys like Larry who are actually out there doing the work who gets tagged with, well, look at all the money these guys are getting, when in fact, you got 60, 70% of the farm bill going to food stamps. So
I believe it's over 80% now.
I believe it's over 80%.
It's over 80%.
So, I guess it's not really a question that neither one of us gave a question. We just pontificated. That's okay.
I guess.
Well, we'll be back right after the break. Right after the break, Larry's more than welcome to stay and throw in his 2 cents worth, but we're going to get it on over Egypt.
Okay.
So, anyway, we'll be back right after the break. You're listening to Doc and Lefty on webcast1live.com. Oh, I forgot to say, I usually say you can text. I forgot my phone at home. So you can't text in, but you can certainly call. You can certainly write to Frank over there. He's excited to have anybody pay attention to him. We'll be back right after the break.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I'm administrative manager.
I'm the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
If we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, it's your home.
It's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, We guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for tuning in for this first half hour. We're very pleased to have our resident expert on all things, Mr. Larry Seiler, with us today. And I say that without any trace of irony at all, because we're going to transition from farming. And I got a lesson. I hope you guys really paid attention, because if you wanted to know anything about where food comes from and just sort of, the dollars and cents of it, I hope that you tune into the first half hour, because I learned a lot. I know that Doc learned a lot. And we're going to move right along, a seamless segue into the horrible atrocity, probably the number one news story right now, and that's Egypt. I mean, this thing, we talked about this 3 weeks ago, Doc, if you remember.
You bet.
Well, whenever we've talked about it recently. And I think at the time you said the military is doing an okay job unless, and I don't remember, you listed off a couple of things that if went wrong, it would go bad. And I think you were probably pretty prophetic. Well, yeah. And these things have gone wrong. Now, just to let everybody know, this really is my area of expertise. It would be like, this is what I enjoy is foreign relations. What essentially happened is they have John Kerry, who is not an experienced diplomat, unlike Hillary Clinton, right? Who you can hate her, love her, whatever you want to do. That old gal is a good negotiator. She's a tough negotiator, and she has a lot of foreign policy experience coming into this. They send John Kerry over, and of course he boffs it, right? The problem is the Morsi supporters of Muslim Brotherhood are this close to gaining a Sharia law type of Egypt. And the problem really comes down to the Coptic Christians are fighting back because there's a large Christian enclave over there. And the second reason is most of the other people understand what happens when you get people like the Muslim Brotherhood in there. The military in Egypt is the one that stabilizes the country. I don't know if anybody watches Game of Thrones out there, but the two people that stabilize the Game of Thrones is the spider character and who's the other guy? Peter Baelish. And what they essentially do is get rid of the people that are going to cause destabilization. And that's what the military in Egypt does. It gets rid of the people that aren't causing or that are creating instability. Essentially what's going to happen at this point is that they're starting to devolve into a civil war, but it's not going to go like Syria because there's a leader over there named Al-Isis, and I think it's ISISALISIS. And he kind of has this cult of personality, for lack of a better term. He's very popular among the people. He used to head up the not the Secret Service, but their equivalent of the CIA. And he is the one that's stepping forward saying, I'm going to run this country.
I'm going to do it the easiest way I know how, but I'm not going to tolerate bloodshed in the streets unless I'm the one doing the bloodshedding, right? I'm going to be getting people. And really what he's done is he sat down and he said, this is what we're going to do to transition back into democracy without having things go all to hell. That's essentially what's going on right now. Part of the problem that's caused Egypt to kind of go under, and one of the reasons why we haven't been successful in Egypt and in large part in other places in the Middle East, is because when you go there, you have to have an overriding goal of what you want to do. What is your plan when you go in? How is this going to further a cause you have, an American cause, a European cause, whatever cause it is? And frankly, Barack Obama, after his apology tour, really has not done anything, has really not said, well, we're going to go here to further American interests or secure oil fields or whatever thing he wants to do. He has not been clear about that. And when that happens, what you get is a mishmash of policies. You have to keep in mind, we are the big kid in the room. We're the elephant in the room. And if we're just standing there, all the mice around are going to keep doing what they're doing, not really sure where we're going. So anyway, Lefty has a confused look. We're going to let him get it back in.
Well, I'm confused because I love you, Doc, and you know that I do, but what you just said really makes it makes no sense. Because that's not the reading that I've had on this from all the different sources that have reported on it, like at all. I mean, this is a direct first of all, bloodshed in the streets. The military just killed 148 innocent people. That just happened over the weekend.
Well, how do you know they're innocent? How do you know they weren't out there throwing bombs?
There was peaceful protest. They just cleared them out of the square and shot them. That's what happened. That's been reported by independent news agencies that were over there. And in fact, a lot of independent folks that were in the crowds got killed. A lot of independent news journalists got killed when this happened.
Well, but that doesn't. But the
military is on thin ice with people. And in fact, a lot of Republicans supported the president when he shut down the war games and is talking about pulling back the funding, which is our main and only leverage with Egypt. That's it. We don't have any other leverage with them. They are number 2 in our foreign aid, and it's all military aid, and that's what they're worried about. But at this point, they probably don't need us because we've given them so much since the 1980s. Number 2, this all stems from the Arab uprising, which if I remember correctly, conservatives were very supportive of at the time. Tunisia, Egypt rising up and democratically overthrowing their leaders and then democratically electing Islamists, which everybody wrung their hands about and said was, oh my gosh, we can't have this because they're not allies with us. To suggest that Barack Obama's policies somehow both failed at appreciating the Arab Spring and also encouraged the rise of Islamists, which came out of the Arab Spring organically, doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Number 3, when you talk about the military, the reason that Morsi was overthrown in a coup, and let's call it what it was a military coup, is because of the tragic way that he was running the economy. The military can say all it wants about he took the democratic principles of Tahrir Square and screwed it all up, and he took all these different things and he was running it like Mubarak did. Well, the military coming in and stomping all over everybody is exactly what Mubarak would have done. And so the Muslim Brotherhood wasn't angry because of some sort of lack of clarity in American foreign policy. The Muslim Brotherhood was angry. They won 3 democratic elections: the first election, the parliament, and confirming the Constitution. And then their guy gets ousted, and so they were going to sit there until he was back, and they didn't budge on that. There was nothing that John Kerry was going to do. In fact, John Kerry came in and said, "How do we get the Muslim Brotherhood to the table?" And the Muslim Brotherhood said, "Put Morsi back." And the Egyptian army said, that's not going to happen, move on to the next point. And so at this point, I don't know what else the administration could have done aside from take control of the country personally. There's just nothing from my reading of it. No, sure. Has their response to Egypt been the same as their response to everything? We're kind of nonchalant and sort of seeing how things go before they jump in with both feet? Yes, it has. And that would be a fair criticism.
All right.
But
we're going to take a quick break right after, and I'm going to clarify my statements and tell you exactly why Lefty is wrong. So we're listening to webcast1life.com. My webcast. From 6 to 7 p.m. I confused myself. I'll be back after the break.
Drink, dance, party. Kitty's is the ultimate dance club in Des Moines. A huge dance floor with room to move, 3 bars to keep your drinks full, and kickin' DJs playing all your favorite dance music. At Kitty's, we've always got your birthday party planned with Birthday Fridays. That's right, when your birthday rolls around, there's only one place to go. Gather up your friends and head to Kitty's, where you drink free on the Friday of your birthday week. Find out more about Birthday Fridays at kittysusa.com. Kitty's, all kinds of people, all kinds of music, all kinds of fun.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. This is Doc and Lefty here with our special guest and hopefully future friend of the show, Larry Seilers. And we thanks for sticking with us for this long. We're kind of getting into the meat and the potatoes. Pardon the farming pun, Larry.
That's all right.
I don't think you're okay with that.
All night to use that one.
I was drawing that chestnut up at my computer. That's why I was late.
I was thinking that one all day.
I was trying to come up with one good pun, and I was 2 minutes late because of it. But we're talking about Egypt, and we're talking about the morass, and I guess not necessarily playing the blame game, because none of us are sitting here saying that it's somebody that fault should be apportioned for some kind of uprising that happens,
yes,
but a response, and whether or not that response should be criticized or not. I think that's probably
that's
a
pretty good way, because I'm not sitting there pointing a finger at Obama and saying, "Listen, you idiot,
you caused this.
You caused this." I'm not saying that.
Right.
What I am saying is, when you send people over there and you start negotiating and you start sending aid, you have to have a vision of what you want to accomplish with your diplomacy. And I don't think he has that vision. One of the things when you have combatants in the middle of basically a civil war is you have to be able to say, hey, listen, here's the vision that we're going for, and let's try to get everybody to go that way. The problem is the Egyptian military is not going to do that. They removed Morsi. That's the end of that story. Trying to get him back and appease the Muslim Brotherhood is not going to work.
That's not what Kerry did, though. But Larry, do you have a take on this that's a little bit different, or maybe backing Doc up? Because I don't see where the administration, I guess, expressly blundered, because the factions are intractable. That's kind of my argument.
Well, the biggest thing is we've been so entrenched there for years. You know, it's not a new situation, but we need a clear direction that we want to go. We need leadership. We've got to figure out what direction we want to go. It's not our country.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can't run that country unless we're going to go over there and just make it a state.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not going to happen. I don't think anybody wants that to happen. We've got to have some type of clear directive to go.
See, well, the U.S. policy towards Egypt has been fairly settled since the Camp David Accords in 78, 79, and then when they signed the treaty in 1980. And that's give them hardware and they'll leave Israel alone, and they will make everybody else leave Israel alone. That's kind of what has been the status quo, and we will tolerate a dictator for 30 years if he enforces that status quo.
But you have a whole new generation of people over there now.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a whole new ballgame.
And the part of the problem is you have a very active but minority vote or group called the Muslim Brotherhood, who basically said, we'll bring in...
They're not the minority, though.
But when you add in the Christians and you add in the other groups that are not the Muslim Brotherhood, they have to put a coalition together just like everybody else does. And don't get me wrong, they won the elections. but they became so unpopular for whatever reason, mainly Morrissey's handling of the economy, that the people said that's enough, no more. Things started to get shaky. The military stepped in, removed them from power, gave them all kinds of reasons to step aside.
Well, and that's true. See, I guess, and this is where I get sort of hung up, is that I am old enough to remember, and it's going to shock a lot of people. I'm old enough to remember the second coup attempt by the Russian military on Boris Yeltsin back in the early 90s.
Yes.
When he held hold up in the, not the Kremlin, whatever the other building is, I can't remember, and they rolled tanks in, and he just and then kind of disarmed them, and it all kind of went away. I remember that kind of stuff. That was a coup, and it was called a coup. And that was our position. That was the United States position, that it was a coup. That's exactly what happened here. Except,
but we haven't said it yet.
We won't call it a coup because of the treaty. Number one,
absolutely.
and I'm not so sure that any president would call it a coup. But if you talk to folks or you listen to the army give its justification, they say exactly what you said. They say, look, we couldn't afford to wait because it was getting so bad. And we told him, step down, or let us help you out, or let us do something with this because you're running us into the ground. We can't afford to. We're too unstable yet. And he wouldn't give, so we booted him. And like you and I have agreed numerous times since the day we met, you lose not just the popular support, and he won the election. He won the first election
handily.
Handily, but really, like you said, the support was cobbled together. The Muslim Brotherhood had the majority, but it was cobbled together. But he never had the military.
No.
You lose popular support and the military, you're in big trouble.
Yeah, you're in big trouble. Yeah. Now, one of the points I made earlier, that we've cut off aid, or at least it's being, I think they've cut off aid. That's my position. Is confirmed by the office of Senator Pat Leahy, Democrat from Vermont, an aide to Leahy, in a statement to Fox News Radio, was told that Leahy's subcommittee was told that the transfer of military aid was stopped. Well, this is current practice, not necessarily official policy. There's no indication how long it will last. And then down the
was that just
article,
today?
Yeah, it's today. Down the article, the White House and State Department really came out with this statement. We have determined it's not in the best interest of the United States to make that determination whether or not it's a coup. So basically, they're sitting there going like, we're not going to send the aid out, but we can't call it a coup. We're not going to call it a coup. And part of the problem that's going on over there is, you have this group that was this close to power, because there's actually signs that you can see over there that says, this isn't about Morrissey. This is about our independence. And I'm all fine with that. But the problem is they couldn't keep their coalition together. And when Kerry went over there to try to help this process, he didn't have a defining goal that he was trying to reach. And I think that's why he failed, and I'm not saying Obama's responsible for what's going on over there. I'm saying if you're going to send an envoy, you have to have a clearly defined purpose of what you're trying to get out of that. And Obama simply hasn't, his foreign policy really is to sit and wait and go with the wind. And that doesn't work that well in foreign policy.
Well, Larry, I guess I would ask you this question then, kind of going off on what Doc just said. When you have two sides that have no interest in dealing with each other, where do you come down? How do you negotiate that?
Somebody's going to come out of it with power.
It's going to be a bloodbath, isn't it?
Well, maybe the military has enough control over there to prevent that. They're trying to keep things under control.
Yeah.
So if they, in my understanding, in Egypt, pretty much the military has always had the control. They decide who runs the country. So they need to get a handle on it again, and maybe that's where this country can come into the picture to figure out, help somebody decide just how the country should continue ahead. We got to have a clear picture.
Absolutely. Now, we're going to take just a quick break to thank all of our sponsors that help us keep our studio going. We have a really nice studio here. It's really come together here in the last year since 9 months since we've been here in the studio. Polk County GOP has been a part of that. They help us keep our doors open. There's the address, the website, and the phone number. They have a picnic coming up September 7th over at Jalapeno Pete's in the fairgrounds. It's going to be a great time. Everybody who's anybody in the Republican Party is going to be there. It should be a real fun time, including we have a lot of local boys making a lot of national press. Steve Dace is one, Craig Robinson's another, and Kevin Hall. And so they're making a lot of national press, and I believe they'll be there as well. Now, back to the subject of Egypt. The first thing that you know in foreign policy in the Middle East is the less you're there, the better off you are. Right. All right. And I can respect President Obama for stepping back and going, you all need to work this out. America's not really going to get involved. But you still have to have a vision for what you want to come out of this. Not just, well, whatever despot happens to be sitting at the table will be fine with. You have to be able to move these things in a certain direction.
What I get, you keep talking about vision. I'm going to ask you, for what kind of do you have? And maybe this is an unfair question since you're not the president, and I apologize in advance.
If you were the president,
what kind of vision are we talking about?
That.
Yeah, right. For sure. What kind of? I mean, we're talking about this nebulous sort of mushy word vision here, and I'm just curious to know what kind of vision we're looking to achieve. So, I mean, what would your takeaway? What would your vision be, Larry, that we're talking about?
I think we need a vision for the whole entire Middle East.
Okay, and what do you see that as being?
Religion is a huge thing over there, and you've got such polar. I mean, you talk about Democrats and Republicans here. It's nothing to compare to the Christians and Islam over there. That is, I mean, it's ingrained in those people for thousands of years. We're not going to change that overnight. Those people don't expect things to change even in 100 years. They try to change things over the centuries. And they have a lot longer history than we do. We have influence because we've been able to build a country here that has a lot of power. We've built a business entity here that can generate funds and buy that power. We don't really need to tell them how to run their countries. The biggest thing I think we need to do is just make sure they're not massacring everybody. I mean, it's more a humanitarian type deal.
And I guess, do you think, and I think that's an attitude that we sort of developed post the 19th century, the wars in Europe, the 19th century, World War I, World War II, with just catastrophic losses of life. I think that before that, maybe each country was a lot more isolationist in its humanitarian sort of side. Yeah. Do you think that seems to me to present maybe not a conflict, but at least two sorts of interests. One interest being self-determination, and then the other interest being sort of universal human rights. And and both are important. And so how do we balance self-determination, might makes right in a situation like this, over humanitarian? Like where would you strike that balance, do you think?
Well, I think you just can't have massacres, period. If we've got the power to prevent those, we have to prevent a massacre.
How would you do that?
Well, that's a good point. And that's probably why we're having so much trouble with it. And that's why I'm not the president. I don't have the answer.
Right.
But, I bring it back, everything I always bring back to farming. Welfare of my animals is critical. I want to take care of them. The President of the United States has kind of got that responsibility. If he has the power to make something happen, to prevent something like that, he needs to use that power, whether it's popular or not.
And I can certainly understand that sentiment. I certainly would agree to it. My sense of at least this, the Middle East, Egypt and Syria and all of in Tunisia now is starting to bubble up again because they aren't happy with what they've elected, and it's just a whole thing. Wow, way to make that sound like nothing. But just it's all sort of kind of this roiling pot, and I wonder, do we worry as much about massacres? I mean, massacres are always bad, but how can we We can't take sides in this. That's the big issue. I can understand preventing a massacre, like say in Rwanda, where you had the government going after ethnic groups of people based on their ethnicity, or Bosnia, or all the different massacres that we've tried.
That was extreme, and it was clear cut.
Yeah, exactly.
This is not clear cut.
It's not.
But somebody's got to be thinking about that. I mean, we've got enough intelligent people in the world to figure this stuff out. Mm-hmm. It is a whole new world in the fact that you talk about in the olden days, the people were opinions of the government. I mean, they didn't talk to other countries. Nowadays, we have social media.
Right.
Twitter was a huge deal in this uprising that we had in the Middle East.
Absolutely.
We had to figure that out.
That's right.
Well, one of the things I want to say about the massacre, not that I'm supporting massacres. I'm not, because I'm sure some lefty out there are twisting around like that.
Don't take a brave stand or anything.
But
Doc's on the record. He's against massacres.
I am against massacres. But part of what's going on is what hasn't been widely reported is that the Muslim Brotherhood took 34 policemen and massacred them. And then,
that's true.
And in retaliation, I believe the Egyptian military said, listen, we're not going to tolerate these protests anymore in support of Morsi. If you want to come out and protest the government, fine. But if you start throwing Morsi stuff around, we're going to do something about it. And because that's how they operate. They do. That's what they do. They say, we will tolerate so much, and then after that, we're going to get you. So I think that's part of the thing, is that you're now in that spiraling cycle of violence that has overtaken Syria. One group does one thing, another group does another thing, and then a third group steps in, does something, and then they kind of start to spiral. You have to keep in mind the Muslim Brotherhood and the Coptic Christians have squared off quite a bit during Mubarak's reign. And Mubarak was very good at setting them up to fight each other. And so what you have now is two groups that naturally hate each other and the Egyptian military trying to mediate that. So my question really is to both of you, what policy, what driving agenda at this point should the United States be trying to get in order to get this resolved? Now, we only have a couple of minutes before we have to sign off and say
sure.
thanks.
The short answer that I would give, and I don't know that Larry would necessarily disagree with me, but the only way out, and it's always been the only way out for all of these different conflicts, is some sort of political solution. I mean, I've presented the conundrum that the political solution seems to be impossible, but just like you said earlier, without some kind of political compromise that people can live with, they're going to keep doing this. And I can't see a way to make that happen when it's a tit for tat, you killed us, we're going to kill you situation. But you can't take sides, because the minute that we started sending arms to the Syrians, we got a video of one of the rebels eating some guy's liver. So it's got to be political, but that's as good as I can do.
What you really need to do is stabilize the country so that business can operate again, so people have jobs, people have food, people can be satisfied.
Yes, absolutely.
You have to have a little bit of comfort. If everybody's starving, you're going to have a war.
All right. Well, I want to thank Larry for coming on tonight, talking with us, informing us about foreign farming methods, United States farming methods, and things like that. I know a lot of people don't find it fascinating, but I'm going to tell you, politics, a very wise person when I was running for Congress told me, you know what, Pat, at some point, politics boils right down to dirt and what you do with it. So farming is very important. We're glad Larry came on. We want to thank our sponsors, of course, Brian Leach for helping us keep this the studio open, Miss Kitty's, Polk County GOP, Lubinas Law Firm, and my firm, Bertrosian Associates. Don't forget the Polk County GOP has a picnic coming up September 7th. That should be a good time. You got anything going on?
I'm playing at a music festival on Saturday, and then I've got a gig in West Des Moines on Wednesday.
All right. So
next week.
Yeah. So where's this gig out?
Blue Moon.
Oh, okay. That'll be pretty good. You ought to come down and listen to them.
It seems like I got to get off the farm more often.
Yeah, that's a problem. We want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening tonight. I want to say a special thanks to our new listeners up in Minneapolis. Thanks for tuning in. That was terrific. We are still just this close to getting our website up. That's Lefty and I's fault on both sides.
Yes.
Now, I will take this opportunity to blame Obama, because if he had set a policy goal for us, we would have already attained this one. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. We will see everybody next week from 6 to 7 p.m. webcast1live.com. Thanks for tuning in.
Hi, I'm Representative Tom Shaw, and I love these guys. Both of them.
Love these guys. Get over here. Get over here. Love both of them.